The committee will suspend. Whoa, 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 whoa. The committee will suspend. Just hold, slow. What do I say?
Maybe states have person.
So I'm prepared to rule. This is not a statement. A deplorable state is not a statement against a person, or it is not engaging in personalities. So I'll continue, and you can reclaim your time.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So we saw recently what the state of Ohio did when their lawmakers refused to listen to them. We also have seen what the state of Kansas decided to do. When it comes to protecting women, it seems like the only people that are standing up for women on an everyday basis are the people themselves, because they're elected officials that somehow get into these positions in a gerrymandered way. They don't seem to represent the interest of the people. But let me talk to you about something that is very real in this country, and that is unhoused people. And I'm sure that while we don't have an expert on the matter here, many of you may not recognize that the majority of the youth that are actually unhoused in this country are members of the LGBTQIA community. When we look at mental health issues in this country, if we care, because I done heard terms that I never thought I hear certain people say up in here. We done heard about equality. We done heard about regressiveness. We've heard about civil rights. I can't get the Voting Rights Act passed. We've heard we need to follow the science. Are you kidding me? When we're sitting up here talking about anti-vaccine and all this nonsense. But let me tell you about somebody that I love very dearly, who has struggled and suffered because of the ignorance that continues to be perpetuated, which is not what is in the will of the people. Young Libby, who has been my constituent for far too long and gone through too much in the state of Texas. At the age of 7, Libby started testifying down at the state house about the bathroom bill. I think that was a Heritage Foundation situation as well. Started testifying at the age of 7 about how it made her feel. Then ultimately, Libby has been testifying, and at this point, Libby is 13 years old. And I'm going to tell you something. I know that it was characterized as, oh, this is the cool thing to do, and maybe people are encouraged to be trans, and so they don't want to speak out. And now that it is not the easy thing to do. When you have to sit here and prove your personhood every single time that you're walking around, you got people that feel away because they losing in the sport. And listen, the trans person, it don't sound like even came in first from what I could tell. But nevertheless, I think we need to focus on real things that are real issues as it relates to women. If you care about women, let's get the ERA passed so we can have equal rights. Let's make sure that we fully fund access to reproductive health. Let's make sure that we are protecting those that are being raped, because they're being raped in this country as well as abroad. And this party has decided that even if you're raped and you're a child, guess what? You shouldn't have access to reproductive health care. That is not protecting women, and I will yield.
Thank you. Before this gets even more out of control, I'm going to try and reel it back in. I'm going to remind everybody on what the title of this hearing is. The importance of protecting female athletes and Title IX. So Title IX was designed to give female athletes equality, fairness. This is about, and I'm going to restate it again because we're getting off track, Title IX and protecting female athletes. I'm happy to have other hearings, but I'd like to stay focused on this hearing, if we could, which again is the importance of protecting female athletes in Title IX. And with that, Without objection, Representative Takano of California is waived onto the subcommittee for purposes of questioning the witness at today's subcommittee hearing. And with that, Mr. Burleson is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, for holding this hearing. I think this is an extremely important topic. I want to reiterate the words of our colleague from Wisconsin. What's happening in our universities is insane. It's almost a de-evolution of thought that has occurred in Western culture for thousands of years, from philosophers like Plato to Descartes to Bacon, that what's in your mind is not necessarily reality and the truth. And you can believe all day long in one thing. It doesn't mean that it's so. And so it's almost like this nation and this attitude that we want to throw out all of this conventional thinking for centuries is really going to be the undoing of this nation. But if you want to know where this administration stands, all you have to do is look at the position statement from President Biden. He said, and I quote, "Let's be clear, transgender equality is the civil rights issue of our time. There's no room for compromise when it comes to basic human rights." There's no room for compromise? That's a very definitive statement. Mrs. Gaines, what do you say to those that claim that there's no room for compromise when it comes to men competing in women's sports?
That statement, I'm not even honestly sure what that would entail. In terms of compromise from women, I don't believe we should have to compromise anything. We should be, and this is what Title IX's original intent was, we should be entitled to competing on the basis of sex and without facing discrimination. But again, what myself and my teammates and my competitors and girls around the country, high school level, college level, continue to face is blatant discrimination on the basis of our sex.
Yeah, I can tell you, I'm a father of 2 girls who both participated in sports. And I'll tell you, when you're the parent on the sidelines and you're watching, the competitive, all that nature flows. And when you see an injustice occur, whether it's teams that are having children that are older than your kids, playing, or and sometimes I will never forget, for many years, boys and girls were equal, especially in soccer, right, which my girls competed in. But there was a point in which it was no longer the case. And as a parent, and all the parents on the sidelines, we would actually count the number, especially still in co-ed, we would count the number of boys and determine which team is probably going to win. And so it was nice whenever they were able to actually hit an age where they were able to compete against other girls and other women. But sadly, that's why everybody who sees what's happening knows that this is injustice. Anyone who is a parent who sees what's happening knows that this is an injustice. In fact, a survey of parents in the United States concluded that 70% of parents do not think that this is a good idea, and yet we're doing it. And so, or that it's being done at our university levels. And of course, if you object, you're considered transgressive or transphobic, and you're effectively canceled. Mrs. Russell, you were effectively canceled for standing up for female athletes on your team. What would you say to others in a similar position who are wondering whether or not they should speak out?
I would still suggest that everybody speak up, because it's because of silence that this continues. The amount of support I received once I went public, the number of emails, direct messages, phone calls, all was positive. Everything on social media was positive in support of this position that girls and women's sports needs to stay female only.
Well, Ms. Russell, thank you for your courageous stand. We appreciate that. I just want to say, to Mrs. Gaines, what happened to you is tragic. I mean, you were robbed of the glory. You were robbed of your opportunity to be clearly the victor. And it's if it weren't so tragic, it would be comical. I mean, and I understand there's a movie being made, the comedy about this very issue, that's on the Daily Wire, that I can't wait to see.
I encourage everyone to watch it. And truthfully, I think that's what's needed. Because what we're seeing, again, what myself and my teammates and my competitors saw was a mockery of women. And I believe it's time we mock the mockery through comedy, because you're right, it's objectively funny. It's inherent to almost look at this and laugh because it feels like satire. But watching that movie, to which I watched, it didn't feel like satire. It felt like a documentary of what, again, myself and girls around the country continue to go through.
Thank you. My time has expired.
Thank you. The chair now recognizes Mr. Takano for 5 minutes.
I thank the chair and I thank the committee for the opportunity to participate. Ms. Russell, these numbers, I'll try to get the substantiation somewhere, but men in this country interscholastically receive $252 million more in athletic scholarships than women for the 2019-2020 year. And girls generally have approximately 1.1 million fewer opportunities than boys to participate in high school athletics. Title IX has not been able to fix that. Does this ring true, that the statistic I just read to you?
I don't have the statistic in front of me, but what I do know is that there are so many more opportunities because of Title IX, and if we allow men and boys into women's sports, which is what is happening,
Russell,
then those opportunities and more scholarships
to whether or not,
go away for women.
I don't know whether or not excluding transgender athletes from participating fixes this gross inequity of $252 million more in athletic scholarships for women and 1.1 million fewer opportunities for girls than boys to participate in high school athletics. My point is that excluding transgender athletes who constitute less than 1% of this country is not a fix to the gender inequities in sports. Let me just read to you.
Am I allowed to say something?
No, I'm reclaiming my time. I want to read to you an excerpt of the veto message from Governor Spencer Cox of Utah when he vetoed the trans ban in sports. He said, he reads this final reason for this veto. He says, I must admit I'm not an expert in transgenderism. I struggle to understand much of it, and the science is conflicting. When in doubt, however, I always try to err on the side of kindness, mercy, and compassion. I also try to get proximate, and I'm learning so much from our transgender community. They are great kids who face enormous struggles. And here are the numbers that have most impacted my decision. 75,000, 4, 1, 86, and 56. 75,000 high school kids participating in high school sports in Utah. 4 transgender kids playing high school sports in Utah. 1 transgender student playing girls' sports. 86% of trans students reporting suicidality. 56% of trans youth having attempted suicide. 4 kids and only 1 of them playing girls' sports. That's what all this is about. 4 kids who aren't dominating or winning trophies or taking scholarships. 4 kids who are just trying to find some friends and feel like they're part of something. 4 kids trying to get through each day. Rarely has so much fear and anger been directed at so few. I don't understand what they are going through or why they feel the way they do, but I want them to live. And all the research shows that even a little acceptance and connection can reduce suicidality significantly. And for that reason, as much as any other, I have taken this action, meaning to veto this bill, and hope that we can continue to work together and find a better way. If a veto write-over occurs, I hope we can work to find ways to show these 4 kids that we love them and that they have a place in our state. I find that remarkable. Now, following that veto and following the override, it was interesting because there was an incident in Utah where parents perceived that the winner of a contest, of an athletic contest, was really not of that gender, was not really a girl. And so what happened is the parents forced this woman, this young girl, to undergo a genital inspection because her body type didn't conform to that of what they thought was a girl and feminine. I just want to insert this article. Judge blocks Utah trans sports ban while probe of athlete emerges into the record. I also would like to unanimous consent to enter into the record the veto message of of Spencer Cox of Utah, the governor of Utah.
Without objection.
Ms. Graves, you cited earlier this issue of straight girls who win being subjected potentially to this invasion of privacy.
That's correct. All girls are subject to these sorts of sex verification processes, whether it be the abusive genital examinations or tracking menstrual cycles or other sorts of deep invasions of privacy. But I think who will be most harmed by that actually are the girls who don't generally fit our stereotype. And there's been a lot of stereotype conversation today. Lots of people fit a stereotype and lots of people don't conform to stereotypes. And Title IX for 50 years has had something to say about that.
Thank you. I'm sorry for going over, Madam Chair. I yield back.
Thank you. Ms. Russell, I'll give you a few seconds to respond.
This is the second time I've heard in here exclusion of transgender athletes. We are not talking about excluding anyone. We are talking about keeping female sports for biological females only. Women's and girls' sports for biological females only. That does not exclude anyone.
Thank you. The chair now recognizes Ms. Fox, Chairman Fox, for 5 minutes.
Ms. Russell, I'd like to continue on this issue. In terms of what Mr. Takano was saying, my understanding is, along your line, it's not just, and it's not a matter it's not just a matter of people who pretend to be girls or women who are biological males moving into girls and women's sports to take a place. But isn't there an issue of the difference in strength and the issue of safety? Aren't those primary issues with saying biological men should not be competing against biological women?
You are correct. So even if a biological male is on puberty blockers, testosterone blockers, they can still maintain their muscle mass with their workouts. As far as the safety, right now we just talked about 3 different high school athletes who've been injured by biological males. One of those biological males is not transgender. And the speed of the shot that he took that hit the girl in the mouth in field hockey, if you don't know what a field hockey ball looks like, it's harder than a baseball and harder than a lacrosse ball. The muscle mass in men, it's not just that, it's the body composition. The hips are thinner. They aren't made to give birth to children. Right. They aren't made to breastfeed children.
Thank you very much. Ms. Gaines, thank you very much for the great work that you're doing and in bringing this issue, keeping this issue in the forefront of people's minds. The lack of transparency provided by the Biden administration about changes to Title IX and other aspects of their social agenda is concerning, particularly for parents. Ms. Gaines, how did your parents find out you would be changing clothes in the same locker room as a biological male?
Well, I had to call my parents. As mentioned in my testimony, we were not forewarned. We would be sharing a changing space. The first time we became aware we would be forced to undress next to, again, this 6'4", 22-year-old male, fully intact with and exposing male genitalia, was when we were inches away from this male also simultaneously undressing. And I'll tell you, I called my parents, specifically my dad, and he was outraged.
And so no one was informed about this ahead of time. What are your former teammates? I'm sure you've been around them. How are they responding to these sweeping changes in women's sports?
Being team captain at University of Kentucky, both my junior and senior year, I made sure to facilitate an environment where everyone felt comfortable sharing their views. And what I noticed was 38 out of the 40 girls on the women's swimming and diving team felt the exact same way I'm sharing with you. And again, I don't claim to speak for every single girl, but I do claim to speak for the overwhelming majority of us because I saw the tears from the girls who, of course, placed 9th and 17th and missed out on being named an All-American by one place. And I felt the extreme discomfort. And I can attest to the whispers of anger and frustration from those girls who, just like myself, had worked our entire lives to get to that point.
Thank you. Ms. Perry, what impact do you believe the Biden administration's attempts to change Title IX will have in parental involvement in women's sports? And how important is parental involvement? Why should we protect it?
Well, this administration is keen to divest parents of their constitutional authority to oversee the care and upbringing of their children at every turn. And the rise in what we've seen of these confidential gender identity policies in publicly funded schools is a perfect example of that. Divesting parents from their ability to be involved in the children's sports, the competitive nature of what will ultimately invest them going forward with the maturity and the success that they'll need later in life, I don't think just involves parents. I think ultimately involves a disservice to teachers, to educators, to school administrators. And the fact of the matter is just the second of these two rules is patently unconstitutional and won't survive a legal challenge.
Ms. Perry, in their April 13th proposed rule, the Biden administration uses the Bostock versus Clayton County ruling as justification. What is the Biden administration's error in using this rule?
It's hard to contain it into a very brief statement, but I will say that the opinion began with Justice Gorsuch writing, "We begin with the assumption that sex means biological distinctions between male and female. At no point was sex expanded to include gender identity. Title IX and Title VII are completely different. Title VII, which was at issue in Bostock, is an employment law that prevents consideration at all of underlying sex or sex characteristics. Title IX, however, is exactly the opposite. It requires consideration of sex. And because Gorsuch was clear to cabin the opinion, saying exclusively we are not talking about anything but employment discrimination law, we are not discussing pronouns, bathrooms, dress codes, or locker rooms, that, unfortunately, was not a message I think the Department of Education was keen to listen to, so they patently ignored it.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Perry. I want to make one clarification that the ranking member of the full committee made. Our current Title IX rule in no way prevents transgender students from participating in sports. It simply said a school didn't violate Title IX by having them compete based on their biological sex. So I just want to clarify that for the record. And since I gave Ms. Russell a few extra minutes, I will tack that time on to you, Mr. Kassar. So
Madam Chair, I ask unanimous consent to enter into the record this study by the British Journal of Sports Medicine showing that after 2 years of hormone therapy, most athletic performance differences between trans women and cis women disappeared, challenging what we've heard today that would have you think all trans women are so physically superior to cisgender women that they are bound to win every match and injure all opponents along the way. This narrative is not supported by science.
without objections, so ordered.